compensated? How are they removed from office? Okay, and also the CEO's duties and responsibilities, CEO duality, and how they're compensated given incentives. What's the process of succession? So today we'll talk about the some codes of governance, Cadbury report that was done, the very first one of corporate governance around the world. That was in 1992. And then again, well, it continues to make an impact even up to this day. That's why it continues to be relevant in in the study of corporate governance. Because the things that are now in practice in good governance, things that have been incorporated for purposes of good governance have mainly, been taken from that report, study of Sir Adrian Cadbury and his team. And then Group 3 is going to tell us more about that. And then Group 4 will tell us about combined code, UK combined code. And I don't know if we will have time for the Sarbanes and Oxley code. Let's see. Okay. I don't know if Group 3 is ready now. Wait for a little. There was somebody had asked for the video. Let me see if I could get it. The link of what we watched last week. Let me see. So is Group 1 ready?
Yes, we are.
Okay, just hang on a minute. So who do I give the equality, the right?
You can give me the rights to share my screen.
Evening. Okay. Now I'll have, before that, let me see if I can get Moses to, I don't know who else is inside the room, because once you share the screen, I'll not be able to see. I'll not be able to see. Moses, are you already in class? Let me see. I don't see all the everyone. I want to share. Yes, okay. Could you help me with allowing people to come in? Moses, can you just speak up so that your name comes up on the list? Can you just say something? Okay, I've got it. All right. So the other one is Steven.
Yes.
Okay. Steve Yaga.
I hope you're all able to see the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so we were to cover the Cadbury report. I'll take you through the brief introduction. So the Cadbury Committee was formed in May 1991. It was formed by the Financial Reporting Council, the London Stock of Exchange, and the accountancy profession. So it was 1 year later that the committee was able to publish the report on 27th May 1992. So another thing that you should note is that Adrian Cadbury was the chairman of the committee. So the sponsors had concerns about current affairs that had led to scams and failures in the corporate sector in the late 1980s and early 1990s. That's why the committee was made. So some of these concerns included low-level confidence in financial reporting. And by financial reporting, it basically means the financial results were put out for the stakeholder and the public, which in balance sheets and so on. So there was low level of confidence in the financial reporting and the ability of auditors to provide the safeguards which the users company expected. Then to add on to that, the committee also noticed that there was actually no frameworks to ensure that directors were kept under review. So it was kind of like no accountability or something like that for the directors. In addition to that, the competitive pressure both on companies and on auditors made it difficult for auditors to demand goals. So in general, this Cadbury report, they wanted to raise standards for corporate governance in organizations. So it's because of that the committee was formed and the publication was released in 1992. So they gained like a huge success on the response to the publication, which was followed by 200 around about 200 responses as per another publication stated later that same year in 1992. And most of the reviews about the committee were positive and supporting the idea. So next we look at the board of directors.
We're going to look at the recommendations made in the Cadbury report for the board of directors.
All right. So could I know who is talking?
Right now, it's Stacy Wangoi Omwando.
Okay.
Okay. Every public company should be headed by an effective board. As we had discussed, like in the earlier class, some of the duties of the board, like in making executive decisions. So within the context of the UK unitary board system, this means that a board is made up of a combination of executive directors with their intimate knowledge of the business and outside non-executive directors who can bring in a broader view. So usually the non-executive directors are people who aren't in the industry or don't work in the company, but people who can bring third-party influence into the decisions of the board. Next slide. So in roles and duties of the board, shareholders are responsible for electing board members. And it's in their interest to see that the boards of their companies are properly constituted and not dominated by any one individual. We'll also see later that there are nomination committees that are set up to help shareholders select the board of directors. All directors are equally responsible in law for the board's actions and decisions. Certain directors may have particular responsibilities, such as executive or non-executive directors, for which they are accountable to the board. The board should include non-executive directors of sufficient caliber and number for their views to carry significant weight in the board decision. Non-executive directors should bring an independent judgment to bear on issues of strategy, performance, resources, including key appointments and standards of conduct. We'll discuss into broader light how the duties of non-executive directors. So the basic procedural requirements are that the board should meet regularly with due notice of the issues to be discussed, supported by the necessary paperwork, and should record its conclusion. It's recommended that boards should have a formal schedule of matters specifically reserved to them for their collective decision. The schedule should at least include acquisition and disposal of assets of the company or its subsidiaries that are material to the company and investments, capital projects, authority levels, treasury policies, and risk management policies. Next slide, please. So more into the roles of the board. Board should lay down rules. Sorry?
Don't go too fast.
Oh, I'm moving fast. Okay, let me slow down. Okay, so further into the roles of the board of directors, the board should lay down rules to determine materiality for any transaction and should establish clearly which transactions require multiple board signatures. We saw this as we were discussing like duties of the board of directors and their executive decisions. Board should also agree the procedures.
Yes. What does it mean by materiality?
This I'm thinking mainly is assets of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Anyone in your group who can explain that materiality? Or anyone from the listeners? What is the materiality of any transaction? Anyone from the class?
I could try explain from the little knowledge I have. I guess materiality is to document these transactions for the use of auditing. So the concept of making into material, sorry to use the word itself, but availability for there to be audit on those transactions. So to have that available data.
To have supporting documents.
Supporting documents, yes.
Okay. Any other input? What is this materiality of transaction? What does it mean? Relative size of an amount. This Victor Onyango, very good. Size of an amount, significance in value. Okay, when you speak of something material or immaterial, significant. Okay, so if the value is big, it's material, and therefore you see the following statement says, and should establish clearly which transactions require multiple board signatures, meaning it has to pass through several scrutiny. It has to be approved by several people because it's of significant value. Then they establish what will be significant from which amount, the amount or the importance of the transaction. It's buying capital assets or it's increasing capital through rights issue or merger, different important issues. If it is material, it's of greater significance. If it is immaterial, well, it's not so important. Maybe two signatures would suffice, or even one. It depends on the importance. Okay? All right. Sorry.
Okay. So other than the decisions based on that materiality for transaction, the board also agrees the procedures to be followed when exceptionally decisions are required between board meetings to ensure that the direction and control of the company is firmly in its hands. This can be seen mainly when it's based on decisions to outline governance of the company. They have to ensure that the procedures are decided and set out before it goes into the company so that they can ensure that the company is firmly in its hands. So also, directors are also responsible under the Section 221 of the Companies Act in 1985 for maintaining adequate accounting records, which are useful for auditing of the company and also just for recording. All directors should have access to the advice and services of the company secretary, who is responsible to the board for ensuring that that board procedures are followed and that applicable rules and regulations are complied with. So we look at also the functions of the company secretary and the importance of the company secretary to the board of directors.
Yeah, the company secretary is very important.
Yes.
Should be knowledgeable of many things.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Also, boards should recognize the importance. Oh. There's someone who's sorry. Is the noise coming from my side?
Yes, I don't know from where. Let me see. We are disturbing you. From?
Oh, no, it's not me. I think it's muted now.
Okay. Sorry.
Continue. Boards should recognize the importance of the finance function by making it the designated responsibility of a main board director, who should be a signatory to the accounts on behalf of the board and should have the right of access to the audit committee. So we can see here the importance of the finance function, and we can see that the board should decide on one person who can be a signatory on behalf of the board to sign on this financial documents. Yes, so on executive directors, we've just looked at the composition of the board of directors, and we've seen that it's composed of the executive directors and non-executive directors. So directors' service contracts should not exceed 3 years without shareholders' approval. And also, executive directors' pay should be subject to the recommendations of a remuneration committee made up wholly or mainly of non-executive directors. We look at the function of non-executive directors when it comes to being a third party in cases such as remuneration. Now, the board of directors is headed by a chairperson. The chairpersons are primarily responsible for the working of the board, for its balance of membership, subject to board and shareholders' approval, for ensuring that all relevant issues are on the agenda, and for ensuring that all directors, executive and non-executive alike, are enabled and encouraged to play their full part in its activities. Also, we should note that sometimes companies select the executive chairperson as a chairperson for the whole board, but usually this is not advised. Or if you choose to select the executive head as the chairperson of the board, they should have a strong vice chairperson who is a non-executive member so that they can bring balance in the making of decisions. Next slide. Now, looking at the company secretary, the chairman and the board will look to the company secretary for guidance on what their responsibilities are under the rules and regulations to which they are subjected and on how those responsibilities should be discharged. Which the lecturer mentioned, the company secretary should be very knowledgeable in the company functions and also in the business so that they can be able to give sufficient advice to the board. Under the Companies Act, the directors have a duty to appoint a qualified personnel for the role of secretary. The board determines whether the secretary can be fired or not. Next slide. And finally, we can look at the nomination committee when it comes to the board of directors. This committee has the responsibility of proposing to the board, in the first instance, any new appointments, whether of executive or non-executive directors. A nomination committee should have a majority of non-executive directors on it and be chaired either by the chairman or a non-executive director. This also is to bring balance in the making of decisions. We've seen here that they've mentioned that it's in the first instance where the nomination committee gives suggestions for appointments, after which shareholders will give their input for nomination of members of the board of directors. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to take you through the appointment and roles of non-executive directors. But first, we need to understand the basics first and not assume everyone knows the differences between the executive and non-executive directors. So the directors are basically the guardians of the company's assets for the shareholders.
Sorry, hold on a little bit. Could I get your name?
Jesse Jr.
Jesse Jr. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So saying the directors are basically the guardians of the company's assets, and they are mainly categorized into two categories: executive and non-executive directors. So what separates the two types of directors are their responsibilities. The executive director has management responsibilities, but the non-executive director doesn't. So the non-executive directors are just board members without responsibilities for daily management or operations of the company or organization. And given the importance of their contribution, they're expected to make contributions which help the board in making their decisions. So they should be selected without form of partiality, and they should be selected with care, just the same way senior executives are. So what this means is they should not be selected based on any form of favorism, or they should not be selected through any means that is not formal. The whole essence here is that they should be selected because they deserve it, and the whole selection process should be done by the board, and not just the board, but by the entire board. So the whole idea of having the whole board is so that there is evidence that they've been appointed on merit and not through any form of partiality. In the appointment, there are two main parties concerned. There's a nomination committee and there's a board. So first, the nomination committee makes the nomination committee nominates the non-executive directors, and afterwards they make the proposals to them. So after the proposals are made to the board now approves or disapproves the proposals made by the nomination committee. And if they're approved, now they are appointed as non-executive directors. Okay, so they should be appointed for specified terms to retain the vitality of the company. The idea behind this is that if the non-executive directors remain on a board for too long, they may lose something which gives them their independent edge, which contradicts the key pillar of independence, which we're going to talk about. Before appointment, they should undergo some form of training, internal or external, and they should be conducted properly for the induction process, especially if they have no experience if they're new to the board. So this is necessary because of the weight of responsibility carried out by the directors and the increasing commitment which their duties require. With the support of the Bank of England, the Confederation of the British Industry, the Institute of Directors, and ProNed, which is a new course covering the full range of board responsibilities, is open to the directors to help them familiarize with their roles and to know what is expected of them. And now on to their roles. Okay, according to the Cadbury report, there are four main pillars of corporate governance: accountability, transparency, fairness, and independence. Independence is a key pillar dictating the way the non-executive directors conduct their roles. This is important because the main role of the non-executive directors is evaluating the performance of the board from an independent and unbiased point of view. So, majority of the non-executive directors should be independent of management and the company and free from any business or any other relationship that may compromise their independent judgment. So what this means, the exclusion from the board in terms of management responsibilities helps them not to be influenced by others. The assumption here is that if the NEDs have any form of association with the organization in terms of management responsibilities, their view may end up being biased, primarily because of the association. But this is only exceptional in the case of fees and shareholding. So this means the executive direction, the directors should not be given the freedom to dictate or give a view on the fees or their remuneration. They should not be able to dictate what they want in terms of what they are paying. So the rationale behind this is that if they it is okay. So now it is up for the board to decide in particular cases whether this definition is met. Information about the relevant interests of directors should be disclosed in the directors' report, and their fees should reflect the time which they work with the company. Their first role is reviewing the performance of the board executive. So they should address this aspect of their responsibilities carefully and should ensure that the chairman is aware of the reviews. If the chairman happens to be also the chief executive, the board members should look to a senior non-executive director, who might be the deputy chairman, as the person to whom they address any concerns about the combined office of chairman or chief executive and its consequences for the effectiveness of the board. A number of companies have recognized that role and have done so formally in their articles. It is recommended that the caliber and number of non-executive directors on a board should be such that views will be able to carry significant weight in the board's decisions. All boards will require a minimum of 3 non-executive directors, one of whom may be the chairman of the company, provided he or she is also not executive head. Additionally, all 3 should be independent in the terms set out in this paragraph. So the second role is bringing independent judgment regarding issues of strategy, resources, including key appointments and standards of conduct. That's still kind of to the first point. And they also take the lead where potential conflicts of interest arise. So an important aspect of effective corporate governance is the recognition that the specific interests of the executive management and the wider interests of the company may at times diverge. For example, there may be takeovers, during takeovers, boardroom successions, or in terms of directors' pay. Independent non-executive directors whose interests are less directly affected are well placed to help resolve such situations because they're not part of the board in terms of management responsibilities. And lastly, the non-executive directors lack the inside knowledge of the company, but they still have the same right of access to information as much as the executive directors do. So the effectiveness depends to a considerable extent on the quality of information which they receive and on the use which they make of it. So the board should regularly review the form and extent of the information which is provided to all directors. The roles they play have generated more significant change in corporate responsibility toward a range of stakeholders, leveraging corporate social responsibility in general. And lastly, in addition to their views, the directors can still obtain legal and financial advice from professional advisors. So the role of non-executive directors is to give independent views, but the company can have additional professional advisors, of course, at the company's expense. So this is done through an agreed procedure laid down formally, for example, in a board resolution, in the articles, or in the letter of appointment. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be handling remuneration.
Sorry, who is this now?
Oh yeah, this is Brian Okoth. Okay, so let's just start with the basics. What is remuneration? This is a payment or compensation received for a service of employment. This includes a base salary and any or other economic benefits that an employee or executive receives during employment. So, however, it often refers to the total compensation received by an executive, which includes not only the person's base salary, but options, bonuses, expenses, accounts, and other forms of compensation. Can go to the next slide now. Yes. Okay. So, some of the challenges that that companies face when dealing with the remuneration are some like forms of pay. Like for example, like an employee pay is usually cash based and bonus pay, but it can also contain non-cash forms of compensation. So the valuation of a non-cash compensation can be very difficult in terms of like networking and stuff like that. It's hard to know how to price such things and value the remuneration that you might afford to an employee. The next one here is pricing new and highly specialized jobs. So in reference to this, employers find that current compensation information sources may be limited because they do not have specific pay data that directly match the job or challenge in setting a competitive salary. So if you undertake a new kind of job which is highly specialized, it usually happens a lot in the IT industry, and there is no information on how to value your job because it's new and it's very unique, then it can be a challenge to handle remuneration. Here we have salary discrepancies between sources. So with regards to this, there are two common issues associated with salary discrepancies between sources. The first is your employee saying they should be paid X amount based on their knowledge of how the position is paid. The second relates to finding the going rate of jobs based on either what the new hires are asking for in the hiring process or what your network advises. So this is a challenge that employers face when trying to find that sweet spot where you're paying just the right amount with regards to remuneration with your employees, because the sources you might have conflicting information on the value of a job between the sources that you have in your network. The next one here is mixed rates of salary growth. This one's pretty simple. Compensation surveys generally show mixed rates of salary growth across different positions. For example, salaries for select IT positions are growing at a much larger rate than some administrative positions. This challenges employers when they're trying to stay competitive with pay increases. You don't want to increase the rate of pay for a particular job in a way that's not competitive and it's earning you losses, or it's making you undertake losses. So yeah, that being said, in the context of remuneration of executive parties in a corporation, the main challenge stems from an agency theory line of thought. It is assumed that corporations lack an internal incentive for the managerial staff to police themselves appropriately with regards to remuneration, and this may lead to waste of stakeholder resources. Okay, next. Next slide.
Sorry.
Yes.
Just a little bit on, go back to the previous slide. What happens to the remuneration? It's just something that I just want to add. What happens with different organization? What they do is they do a job evaluation, and then they consider the job description, the position, the experience, the expertise, and sometimes they conduct I can't remember the term now, but they get other companies part of the job evaluation, and they do benchmarking. They with parang it's like they do some survey, okay? And of course, these are confidential data that you just agree with the different institutions that you will provide the results of the study, so that you don't just have the whatever the results come out, no? So they with that, the participating organizations can get a glimpse also of the salaries that are being given by other organization. So then they can see whether the salaries are competitive or not, depending with comparable jobs, the same position, the same job description, the same specialized kind of jobs, so similar within the industry. So you can get an idea when you do this kind of benchmarking or survey through these. So then more or less you can, they don't release this in public as such to the public, but the participating organizations can know. It can help to know the rates. Okay, sorry. Continue.
Yes. So here the Cadbury report proposals on remuneration. So these proposals address that main challenge that we discussed in the previous slide, where it's assumed that the executives in the corporations lack the incentive to police themselves appropriately when they're handling their own remuneration. So when they're trying to, they might give themselves undue bonuses and so on and so forth. So the Cadbury report proposals help in managing that. So these proposals are the code of best practices detailed in the Cadbury report, and they provide proposals that enable a greater accountability when a corporation is setting remuneration protocols for the senior executives. So the main ones include all quoted companies should have at least 3 non-executive directors. The director's service contracts should not exceed 3 years without stakeholders' approval, and the posts of the CEO and chairman of the board should not be held by the same individual. So you can see you can obviously see how this proposal would help with the providing greater accountability by removing by minimizing the amount of power that the executive parties have over their remuneration. And you can see here in the last statement where the CEO and the chairman of the board should not be held by the same individual. That also reduces the amount of power being held by the executive parties. The next one here is the total emoluments of directors and those of the chairman and the highest paid UK director should be fully disclosed and split into their salary and performance related components, and the basis by which the latter, which is the performance related components, is determined, should be explained. So with the word emoluments, basically just means pay, like the total amount of salary or fee that a certain employee gets. So the emoluments of the directors should be fully disclosed, and the performance measure that was used to determine this total pay should also be made public and explained so that it can be criticized accordingly. Next, we have the executive director's remuneration should be subject to the recommendations of a remuneration committee made up wholly or mainly of non-executive directors. So you've already been hearing this a lot with the other presenters. The whole point is to take away too much power from the executive parties and allowing for non-executive directors to handle the remuneration by making a remuneration committee out of them. So you can go to the next slide. Okay, so executive remuneration. So how is the executive remuneration handled? So remuneration of these parties is commonly done with performance-related pay, PRP. From an agency theory's perspective, PRP is used to create a shared interest between stakeholders and executives. This is, of course, assuming that the PRP scheme isn't handled by the executives themselves. So, when I say that the PRP is used to create a shared interest between the stakeholders and executives, what I mean here is that the stakeholders want returns on their investments, and if you base the returns of these investments, if you use that as a performance measure for the job that the executives are doing, then the executives will be given an incentive to work better and share a common interest with the stakeholders, so that we can keep in line with the criticisms of the agency theory. So here, if we look at the PRP schemes, use the following success measures. The first success measure that we have here is the share price performance measures, where the share price is directly proportional to the executive remuneration. So it's what I've just mentioned before. The rise of the share price can be used to measure the success of a company or the success of the executive party's performance. And if you can make this directly proportional to the amount of remuneration that executives receive. The problem with this is that a rise in the share price of a particular share of a particular company is not always directly correlated to an executive's actions. Sometimes completely unrelated things, for example, this COVID situation, can give rise to the share prices of some hand sanitizer company. But that is not necessarily the result of the executives doing a good job. So this first success measure is not always perfect, because there are a lot of outside situations that can affect the share price. The next one here is accounting-based performance measures, where the earnings per share or return per asset is directly proportional to the executive remuneration. This one is a better version of the first one, because it accounts for the actual efforts of the executives, and usually accounts for the outside factors and removes them when trying to measure the executive performance and relate it proportionally to the remuneration that the executives receive. Next slide. You can go to the next one.
Sorry, just a comment.
Yeah.
Just a comment. Go back to the previous slide. I wanted us to have a break at some point, but please go back there. It's this is with all good intention, because there has to be what they wanted, and the committee wanted to establish was that there should be objective measures, for increasing, for I mean, to find justification for the increase in the executives or the directors' earnings. Okay, but what happens is that sometimes they use it also to do to do some dishonest activities. Okay, it's like, when you think of people who are in sales, all right. So if the earnings depend on the sales, okay, they may commit, illegal things just to earn the commission that they want to earn. All right. So the same with I mean, in this case, the CEOs may, as it happens, I think, with Enron, and as they are going to tell us, these other cases we have studied, in order to benefit themselves, they report, they magnify the reports, they doctor, they manufacture, they do false accounting in order to claim that they have earned, their, if you have earnings per share, so you want to inflate your results, or commit illegal things in order to actually gain those earnings. I mean, to gain benefits, to gain from the transaction. So then they cheat in the process, and then but the the committee didn't really intend that. But you know how people are, they find different ways in order to maneuver around, to gain their own advantage. Anyway, I hope I explained myself. Can we go after this slide? Can we first go for a break, or you would want to continue? Because
This is the last slide regarding remuneration.
so we finished the remuneration. Okay, sorry about
Yes.
that.
Okay, so the challenge of implementing the proposals. So as you've heard over and over again, the cabinet proposals on remuneration and other proposals in general are highly dependent on the moderation of the executive remuneration by non-executive parties. You've been hearing this over and over again, non-executive parties. So if you want to implement this proposal successfully, uh, the the success depends highly on the selection criteria of the non-executive parties, and their powers and the resources made available to them, and the level of practical independence they have from the executive members. So it's here where the majority of the challenges arise. For example, according to a summary of the US evidence regarding exec to non-executive relationships by Milgram and Roberts, the remuneration committees are made up mostly by CEO and executive nominations. Thus, we get some transparency issues, because we cannot be sure that the CEO and other executive parties elected these non-executives with good intentions in mind. Additionally, a study by Jensen in the American Economic Review states that non-executives who have no equity at stake in the company have no power to discipline the executives. If you this one is pretty obvious. Like if you have no power at the company, you can just the executives can just take you in circles through some documentation, and they and you'll have no methods of disciplining them when they do something wrong with regards to remuneration. Yeah.
Okay. Also, okay, that's true. But non-executive directors oftentimes are meant to be representing the shareholders. So they are kind of nominated or proposed by the shareholders. So ideally, since they represent the shareholders, and maybe some are majority shareholders, somehow they get a little bit of power, of that influence, knowing that they are backed up by those people. Although they are meant to be independent, they have no stakes as such in the company, but by the fact that they have been recommended or by shareholders, and they are there to represent them, then somehow they have that power of representation.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so shall we go for break or lunch? Something to that effect. Is that all right? Okay, so how long should we go away? 15 minutes? Okay, let's do 20 minutes then. I was going to suggest 15, but fine, we can do 20. So that we don't eat in such a hurry. At least I'm going to have lunch.
To avenge his mother and destroy his father. Fast forward.
Should we start?
Yes, but who's now doing this part?
This is Victor Onyango. Okay, so auditing. Maybe I can just start by just defining what auditing is. Auditing is a process of examining an organization, the individual financial records to determine if they are accurate and in accordance with any applicable rules, including accepting accounting standards, regulations, and laws. So, why is auditing important? So, first, say audits provide an external and objective check on the way in which the financial statements have been prepared and presented, and it is an essential part of checks balances required. And also, they offer the most direct method of ensuring that companies are accountable for their actions. Let's go to the next
Further
slide,
developed
please.
skeletal muscle moves in his body. He wasn't much more than
Next
skin
slide.
and bones. You can guess the
Okay,
level of the
problem
obsession
statement.
was perfect.
So,
Jack would punch sandbags for over 40 hours a day,
auditors work within a
eating
framework,
less
and
than breakfast, using
at
the
this time
restroom
during the Cadbury
and
report,
lift weights until his
the
bone
committee
fractures, which
was
generally
able
saved
to notice
most
that
of
the
the
framework
framework
in which the auditors at that time were working at, the framework they used was not well designed in certain aspects to provide maybe objectivity which shareholders and the public expected from auditors when they were carrying out their functions. So as a result, they outlined the main problems that faced the framework. The first problem was accounting standards in practice sometimes allow boards too much scope for presenting facts, and the figures derived from them in a variety of ways. Okay, so for this problem, the result was that auditors at the end of the day could not stand firm against a particular accounting treatment if it falls committed within the standards, which was working against auditors in the duties. Second problem is although the shareholders formally appoint the auditors and the audit is carried out in the interest, the shareholders have no effective say in the auditing decision and have no direct link with the auditors. So as a result of this, so the committee in this problem, they were able to see that there was certainly at the moment there was certainly no practical way of establishing this communication link between the auditors and the shareholders. So as a result, they
they didn't find a way of establishing this link, but they did say that they also concluded that as a result of this link not being there, the auditors at the time they're working closely with the management that drafted the financial statements so that they can carry out the tasks and, and other duties required of them. Third problem is audit firms are in competition with each other for business. So in this problem, you could see like each audit firm was trying to maximize the business they could with each client, with each of their clients. So as a result, the good side of this was that due to this competition, the audit firms they did the best to maintain a professional reputation, of course, to increase the market. The successful, the success in the market, and also try working. They also tried making like it also get this competition also get the professional ethos of the firms, and also in this, and of course, there's also been the release in the settled the litigation, but we find that the main problem that arose from this was that within this competition between the audit firms, they also competed on prices, of course, which at the end of the day came at the expense of the needs of the shareholders they chosen, which also needed to be regulated, but at the time it was not being regulated. So for companies are too subject. Sorry,
Victor,
yes.
I would like to ask you, audit firms are in competition with each other for business. How is it a problem faced by the framework of operation? Is it
Oh,
just because of the prices of the fees, professional fees by the different audit firms? Why is it a problem? Why could it be a problem?
from the document itself, in the Cadbury report,
Mhm.
they stated that the problem was because of also this competition on prices. Okay, let me like reference the document. To, so to the extent, however, that audit firms compete on prices and on meeting the needs of their clients, the companies they audit, this may be at the expense of meeting the needs of the shareholders. But they didn't necessarily like extensively explain
Yeah,
what's that.
yeah. So I would like to ask the class, why should it be a problem here? Anyone who can see the connection of possible lack of objectivity or lack of independence in this case?
You know as well as I.
Okay, no answer. Fine, just proceed. We'll see it in another when I ask you another question later.
Okay.
Or anyone in the in your group who can provide an input. Anyway, if there's an it's okay, we shall see it in when we discuss something later.
Fourth problem is that companies are too subject to competitive pressures in which they seek to minimize audit costs and are subjected to the figures they wish to see published in order to meet expectations of their shareholders. So, in this, I think that one is it's just self-explanatory. And just it was basically I don't think there's much can say from that. It's self-explanatory. Then the fifth problem, lack of understanding of the nature and extent of the auditor's role. So this was it was mainly it was mainly brought out using the expectation gap, which we're going to look maybe in a few minutes. So the expectation gap is basically like it's what the auditors achieve in respect to what is thought they should achieve or should be achieved. What they achieve achieve or should be achieved. So yeah, this is at the it's kind of like about unrealistic expectations of audits, and yeah, it basically about unrealistic expectations of audits. So yes, but we look is okay, yeah.
The number 4, go back to that slide. Number 4 somehow explains number 3. Expands. Because audit firms are in competition. Because they are in competition, we want to maintain the business with the organization they render service, the organization that they are auditing. So sometimes, they wish to meet the expectation of the shareholders or the directors or the executive management. So they agree, they become complicit with them in publishing favorable reports. Okay, so then in the process they may lack objectivity. Because of the firm's competition, if you disagree, if you publish something that is not agreeable with your client, it's not very easy to oppose, okay? Because you will lose the business. Because the audit firms are also business. So they may lack objectivity because of that. They don't want to miss to be disconnected or to lose the opportunity.
Okay.
So that other competing companies may take over their position and their jobs. Okay.
Okay, so I think we're done probably we can go to the next section. Okay. So financial report council. So at the time there was a new regulatory framework that was being built. This board, the Financial Reporting Council, and the associated bodies, which are the Accounting Standards Board, Urgent Issues Task Force, and the Financial Review Panel, was set up to improve and tighten accounting standards to deal with the problems areas as they emerge, and to examine the departures of the individual companies from the statutory requirements and accounting standards. So this new statutory regime for regulating auditors required all auditors to satisfy a professional body as to their competence, experience, and training, and to be subject to regular monitoring. So the establishment of this council was one of the steps that was used to strengthen auditing approach at the time, which the board which the board also felt that was a good step towards strengthening maybe the accounting standards at the time in the UK. Yes, next
Go
slide.
ahead is believing to make each day a brighter day.
Okay, so second step was professional objectivity. So in professional objectivity, shareholders required the auditors to work. Okay, here the shareholders required the main issue. The central issue was to ensure that an appropriate relationship exists between auditors and the management who drafted the financial statements they're auditing. So here the shareholders, from what they expect from the auditors is they work with and not against the management, while still applying the professional skills impartially and retaining a critical detachment and the consciousness of the continuity to those who formally appoint them. So this will be achieved, or the committee outlined steps to which this will be achieved more effectively. The methodology was development of more effective accounting standards which provide accurate points against auditors exercise of professional judgment. This position will strengthen the standards and not allow alternative accounting practices. Second, and also the accounting standards board was also agreed with the same method.
and that combined with a remarkable
and the
debt
second
spurred him on
was
to wipe his slate
formation
and
by
under
every
on
listed
his
company one
head.
audit
Yeah,
committee.
the way they laid it out was so confusing and aggravating.
The formation by
I
every
think
listed
they
company
wanted it
one
to
audit
seem
committee,
like there was
which
a
gives auditors
twist,
direct access
because it's
to
really just an open and
the
shut case
non-executive
that this
members
kid
of the
had
board.
money problems. Murdered his
So
family,
this
then
step
took off. They really
will
stretched it out and played out the weird note he wrote.
this
But
share
because it
this
turns out they
shareholders
essentially knew he
looked
did
to
it
the audit
and where he
committee
headed.
to ensure that the
That's not even
relationship between
mysterious.
auditors and
I remember
management
Unsolved
remains
Mysteries
objective
saying
and
there
that
was
the
no
auditors
evidence of the
endeavor
house,
to put
like
the
it was
views in
all
the event
perfect.
of any
And I
difference of
thought,
opinion
there's
with
no way a
management.
man who loved his family could murder them
That's
all
under
without
approaching the
leaving
audit
evidence.
activity.
And I honestly
The
thought he
next
had been
point is
kidnapped too.
polling team
But then I
auditing
read
and
a
other
separate report on
services.
it and found out there was all
So
kinds
in
of
quality
evidence of the
report,
house,
auditing
and that the
reviewing
Jew
like
was basically a
putting
floundering,
audits, the
failing
audit service as
megalomaniac.
one of its
He totally did it. Missy
from
Bethers, the footage of her
audit
attack
firms
wandering around
like
the church in
not provide
Guadalquivir,
other
waiting
types of
for
services
her to
to
arrive. Horrifying.
service to the
The fact that they are on crystal clear
audits
video
to
yet
ensure
still
that
has not been identified.
one
Just WTF all around.
we could remove
This
any
is one
pressure on
case
auditors
that I always
to
check
give
in on
way to
every few
management and audit
months.
matters
Woman
in
goes
order
to a
to not
church at like
jeopardize
4
their
a.m.
other
to
business
teach a Zumba
services.
class
And
and
to
gets
remove
bludgeoned to
any
death by
incentive
someone
for
wearing
auditors
police
to
riot
take on
gear. To this date, no
take on
arrests have
audits
been
activities
made,
could
yet
risk
they have
undercutting
video of
the
the
hope
suspects walking
of
around
obtaining
all
more
nonchalantly.
remunerative and
The horror
audit work.
that woman must have felt gives me chills. The
So
way
in
the
this
killer
statutory
walks around
vision
the church so calmly and
will
slowly gives
limit
me
the
the
freedom of
creeps.
companies to choose the
The
sources
Watcher.
of advice
In New
and to
Jersey, a
increase
family
the
bought a
cost.
house at
So
$657
the
Boulevard
committee,
and
however,
began
is not
receiving
persuaded
letters
that
from an eloquent
any
man who
potential
claimed to
gains
have
in the
inherited
activity
a family tradition of watching the house. The letters were not pleasant ones. All
the
hail the Watcher.
disadvantages.
But in all
They
honesty,
did, however,
after
extend the
reading
support
Young
for
Blood, the
disclosure
tone
fees
changed from
paid audit
okay,
firms for non-audit work to
stalker,
enable the
to
relative
what? The
significance of the
flip,
company's audits
leave,
and non-audit
now.
fees for the audit firm to
The
assess
Eistel
the
woman.
appropriate
She was a foreign woman found
regulatory,
burned to death in a
context, and
remote area in
maybe
Norway in
worldwide context too.
1970. She visited Norway twice in 1970,
Next
once in March
point is
1970,
rotation of
and then in
auditors.
November 1970.
So in
The
rotation of
Eistel
auditors,
woman stayed
it
at various
was being
hotels
used to
around
prevent
Norway under
relationships
several
between the
false
management and
names,
auditors
and
becoming too
supposedly possessed
complicated.
false passports.
In the long
Hotel
run, the
staff
committee felt
reported
that
that she
the
kept to
loss of the
herself
trust
and
and
spoke to
experience
them in
which
German
built
and
up
broken
in the
English.
relationship was
She was also
soured
witnessed
by
conversing
the
in
risk to
French with
audit
a man at a hotel lobby. The Eistel woman stood out
and
in
the risk to
Norway
audit
because she looked
effectiveness at
foreign
the
and
change of
dressed very
that
stylishly.
is
She was also a lone woman
the
staying in a
pros of
hotel,
this
which was
this
unusual in
relationship.
1970. After her
So
death, it was
and
rumored
so
that
in
she
this
was a
case, it
spy
will
from
also
Israel or Russia.
assist
Nobody knows
the
who
audit
she
firms to be
is
more
and why she
objective
came to Norway.
in the
Her death was ruled
objective
as a
and
suicide. Though many
this maybe
investigators
trying
dispute
because the
this
way of
ruling,
making sure maybe
she
like
was probably
auditing will be
drafted
more objective
unwillingly as an
in
informant.
the auditors
When they
involved
found
in the
her,
duties.
she had eaten a
And the
ton of
committee agreed
anti-acid
that,
pills before
however,
she
in the
was shot,
case of
which
listed
makes me think
companies,
she
a
tried to
periodic
run,
change of audit
then knew
partners
they
should
were
be
after her, then
ensuring a
tried
fresh
to
approach to the
commit
audit.
suicide by
So
overdosing,
the
but was
audit,
caught
the
before they took
committee
effectively
recommended that
burned her. So
drafting
there was
the drafting of
suicide
appropriate
involved,
guidelines
but she was
uh,
definitely murdered.
to allow a
Likely to
measure
keep
of
all of this
flexibility
under
over
wraps.
timing to take
The
account of
Isabella
incidents
Stewart
or
Gardner
other changes
Museum
in
art
senior
heist
personnel, both
on
in
the
the
night
audit
of March
team and
18,
client company.
1990. Museum
Okay,
guards
so
allowed two men dressed as police officers to
ways
enter
to increase
Boston's Isabella
effectiveness and
Stewart
value of
Gardner
the
Museum.
audit. The
They were fake
expectation that,
cops and
as I said
immediately
earlier,
tied up
is
the
that
guards and set about stealing 30
it's
artworks
the
worth
difference.
$500,000.
It's like what the auditors achieve
Despite the $10
and
million
what is thought
reward,
they achieve
the
or
case remains
should achieve
unsolved. I
in their
actually
duties.
work at this museum,
So
and
it's,
what's
as I
so
said earlier,
frustrating is that
it attracts
everyone
like
is
an
pretty sure that it is.
unrealistic
Boston
expectations of
Mayfair, they were
audits.
planning to try and get him for
And it's
45.
which
Me.
leads
But what
to
makes it so
like
upsetting is that
disenchantment
most likely these
or maybe like
works,
just
which were
overall
already
disappointment in
irreparably damaged when they were taken out of the
overall
frames, they're
results.
probably just left to sit in a basement
So
or attic and are still there.
under this
Even
waste
most
or the
valuable works,
expectation gap and the
Vermeer
ways
and
to
Rembrandt's
increase
Anglice
effectiveness
scale
and value
are
of the audit.
instantly recognizable and will be similar
Companies were
designed
meant
to
to
sell.
manage
Plus,
to
they had a
maybe
brand
like
set up,
clear.
and the
It was
reputation
it was required that
they were probably just taken
the first step
kind of
will
insurance
be
or
to
power
make
plays within the
clear,
mafia. The
it's
latest
clear
tip,
about the respective responsibilities of
2012
directors
put the pieces
and
in a
auditors
show
to
that had been
preparing and
completely
reporting on
flooded
the financial
and
statements of
subsequently
companies
cleaned
in order
out.
to begin
Even if
to
that wasn't where they were,
narrow this
it seems
expectation
likely
gap.
that they were or are in
So,
a similar
because
situation.
the auditor's main role is
I'd
to
say the
report
most
whether the
interesting
financial
case is the one
statements
building
give
a
a true
septic
and
tank
fair
zap.
view
It
and the
took
audit
place
is
at
designed to
Cofield,
provide a
a small
reasonable
town in
assurance that
Alberta with roughly
financial statements are free of
200
material
inhabitants and
misstatements.
located 70 kilometers
And
east of Edmonton.
and
It began in April
one of the
1977.
first expectations
A
of
local
auditors
couple named Charlie and
was
Mavis McLeod wanted
that
a pump
auditors
for
should
their
prepare
septic tank
financial statements
and decided to take the one in the tank, located in their own
provide
Abandon
absolute
farm,
assurance that the figures in the
located
financial
13
statements are correct,
kilometers outside of Tofield.
or
However,
to provide a
when they
guarantee that
opened the
the company will
tank, they saw
continue
a sock and a shoe, and when they
which
picked up the shoe,
which
it
was
turned out to be
which
attached to
case
a
was
leg.
not the
The police
was
were
not the work
notified
of
immediately. They drained
these
the
rules are
tank
not the
and
work
removed
of
the
the
decomposed body of
auditors.
a
So this
full-grown
was
man.
one
And
of the
so
reasons
began
why
one of the most
they had to
horrifying
clear
murder
this
cases in Canada's
responsibility so that
history.
everyone
The
knew
man was heavily
what the
decomposed
auditors' work was to
and
do.
was wrapped in bed
So
sheets.
the auditing
The
purposes
killer
board
thought,
was
"We don't want him to
at the
quit
time
in the
developing
decomposition. He was
proposals for
generally
standard report
mutilated, and if the police
which would
asked us,
describe the
like
key
to
features of
know
the audit
if he was
process.
man or a woman."
And the
He also
committee
had signs of
that drafted
torture,
the report
with burn
supported the
marks from the
initiative.
butane tortured cigarettes,
And
as shown
so the
from the
auditors'
burns on his
reports and even
clothes.
the issue
He
state
also
clearly that
appeared to have
auditors'
been tied on a
responsibilities for
bed on the
reporting
time of
on
his
the
death.
financial
He was
statements
eventually
to
shot in
handle
the
his
head and in
expectation
the
gap.
chest before
So for
being dumped in the
internal
septic
control,
tank. There could have been more shots, but they
the
only found some broken
committee
bones.
they
Reports
supported
about his fate are a result of multiple
the
investigations done
committee
through the
believes that
years.
an
He
effective
was
internal
buried in an
control
unmarked
system
grave
is an
and
essential
was
part of
exhumed
the
when forensic
efficient
scientist
management of a
Clyde Snow from
company.
University of
So
Oklahoma wanted to make a
directors
third
should report
reconstruction of his
on
face
the
in
effectiveness of the system
1979,
of internal
and again
control
in
and that the
2000
auditors
when
should report
forensic
on the
scientist
station.
Cyril Chan made
The
another
committee
clay face
recommended
of
that the
Sam. His teeth
accountancy
info was
profession, in
sent to
conjunction
over
with the
800
representatives
dentists
of
across the
preparers of
country with
accounts,
no
should take the
avail,
lead
only
in
agreeing that his
developing
teeth
a set
were
of
in bad
criteria for
shape
assessing
and that little work
effectiveness,
he did was
developing
probably
guidance
done in
for
Canada.
companies on the
Many
form
people
in
claim
which
to
they
have known
should
Sam
report
and
and
said that he
developing guidance
fit the
for
description of missing
auditors on
relative.
relevant
These
audit
reports came
procedures
from all
and
over
the form
Canada
in
and
which
even
auditors
from
should report.
California, but they were all
And the
ruled out by
last
teeth records. This
way of
scared the
increasing
small
effectiveness and
town.
value of the
People were
audit is
checking their septic
going
tanks
concerns.
and were afraid
So a
that their
going
neighbor
concern
is the killer, and
is
residents were afraid
basically a
that the
company that
killer
is
might be a
financially
regular
stable enough
customer.
to
They could get a little
its
info about him through
obligations
the
and
years of
continue its business for the
investigation.
foreseeable
He
future,
initially thought to be
or
white, but agreed later that he was a Native
as
American. This is mainly based on his sharp face
defined
and
in
cipher. His bones and teeth showed
in
that he suffered from an illness in his childhood. He didn't match
majestic
any of the missing
form.
persons descriptions in
It's a
Alberta,
company
so he
that's
probably
going
was
concern
from the
is a
province
company
and was probably a
that will still
migrant
be
worker.
operating 6
His
months following
clothes,
the
neatly
date of
shirred
the
blue
audit report,
shirt,
or 1 year
jeans pants,
after the
cloud
date
swallowed the
of the
imitation,
balance,
indicate that
after
he
the
was
date
a
of
worker,
the
either
balance
in
sheet,
construction or in a farm. The killer was probably a
whichever
local,
comes first,
since he
whichever
knew
is
that
later
the farm was
continues
abandoned.
to.
The
That's
motive for
now
murder
become
is
a company
probably
as a going
revenge for a
concern.
sex crime that
So
Sam committed, as the genital
so at the time,
mutilation
under the
indicated
company
Sam.
law at the time,
He called to be a
accounts were
child
to be prepared on the
molester.
assumption that the
Jay,
company
who
is a
slept
going
with the
concern.
killer's wife. Sam is said to
However,
have
there
been
was no
between
explicit
24 to
requirement for the
32
developers
years
to
of
satisfy
age, and
themselves
later the age was
that
raised
it
to
is reasonable to
32
make
to
this
40.
assumption. For
It was
example,
speculated
by
at
preparation
first
of an
that Sam
adequate
was in
cash
the
flow
tank for 3
forecast.
months, but
So
the
one of
date
the
was
proposals
pushed
that's
back
been
to
made
a
is
year.
that there
Web sleuth
they,
tried to
there
solve the
is
case.
there should
Their
be a
nearest
scope
match
for
was the man
amending
named
auditing
Edward
guidelines to
Dargan,
require
a native who left his
the
home
auditor
in
to
June
take a more active role in
1975 in
going
Colton in
concern
southwestern
assumptions and
Alberta.
to give a
He was
report only
driving his
directed to the report.
1969 Ford
And
Morgan
also,
station
the
wagon,
second proposal
which
was
was
that
later found on the side
there
of the
was a strong
road,
argument for
and he was
amending
never
company
seen
law to
again. He was
place
ruled out
an
because he
explicit
was missing
requirement on
6 teeth.
directors to satisfy
Well, Sam had
themselves
all
that the
his
going
teeth.
concern
4
basis is
decades have
appropriate and
passes
to
since
report
Sam was
accordingly to
murdered, and his
shareholders.
identity, along with his
The
killers,
committee
is
believes
yet to
that
be
the
known.
going concern
As of
problem are more likely to
2019,
be
with
addressed
time passing,
successfully
his
if they are
relatives,
identified
killer,
early.
and any
There
witnesses
are,
are dead
however,
or
two
dying.
grounds for concern
Only hope to
due
identify
to
him now is
this
through DNA,
belief. The
although
first
hair's likely to
ground for
remain a
concern
John
was
Doe
that
forever.
there
Retired
must be a
Sergeant
risk
Ed
that gaining
Lammers, one of
qualifications
the
about
first people on the scene, says the
gaining
only hope would
qualifications
be that the killer would
about
confess
for the
on his
company's as financial viability. However, it is
Giulio
expressed
Regini was
through
an Italian
precipitate the
university
company's
student from
collapse.
Cambridge. He was
So,
doing
in the
some
second,
research in Egypt for the American University in
actions of the
Cairo, and
company
he
did not
wrote some
look at
articles
implications of
with a
the
pseudonym
legal repercussions
about
that
the
firms are required to
2011
undergo in
Egyptian
concerned basis,
revolution.
are widely
His dead and
understood by the
mutilated
electors.
body was
So
found on
the
the
most
side
of
of the
them did
road
not
outside
understand
Cairo
what,
on 3rd
like,
February
they did not
2016.
understand,
He
like,
had signs on his body that
if you read
indicated
the
he
actual
was
definition of
brutally
this, like,
tortured,
yeah, it's
broken ribs and
like
fingers,
the
both
period in which
legs, arms and
which will
fighting.
make a company,
He
like
was
the
probably
needs
killed by
the
the
company
Egyptian
maybe like
secret services.
they will be
We
treated
still
as a
don't
going
know the
concern.
truth about
So,
his death, and the Egyptian government still hasn't
conclusion
do
to
anything to
this
help
going
Italy
concern
solve the case.
going concern
This made and makes me realize how
issue
dangerous
was
are
that
some countries in the world still
the
today.
principles
I
should be
guess it's safe to
these
assume
principles
the
should be
rumors are true, and
consensually,
that he was mistakenly
consciously
taken for a spy, abducted,
applied, and that
tortured,
new
and murdered.
guidelines should be
This is
developed, and that
99% how it went
must
down.
strike a careful
What we
balance
really
between
need to
drawing proper
know
attention
is
to
who are
the
the
conditions
actual
in which
persons
the
responsible
continuation
for
of
how is
the business
basically an
depends,
open
and not
secret.
requiring directors
But
to
who has to
express
be
the
discovered?
necessarily cautious
Claudia
reservations that
Kirchhoff,
could
a
or themselves
journalist
jeopardize
going
the
to a press
business.
trip in Havana, Cuba.
The guidelines should
Make it
also
to her
recognize the
destination.
position
The
of smaller companies,
29-year-old
since
stayed at
the
the
definition,
Sandals Beaches Resort in Negros. Jamaica, while
the
waiting
smaller
for
companies was
available
taken
flights
into
to the
account
United
during the drafting
States.
of this.
Since she was not
And
able to enter Cuba,
maybe during
Kirchhoff stayed a bit
the
longer at the
definition of
resort
this
before
issue.
mysteriously disappearing.
So there are some
The only missing
recommendations that were
things
brought
from her
about.
room were the clothes she
So
wore the night of her
Sorry,
this was the
disappearance.
first.
Kirchhoff
Yes.
so let
befriended
me
bartender
interrupt.
Anthony Grant, whose
You were
behavior,
talking about this
including
going
calling in sick
concern,
4 or 4
and you
days after
mentioned
her
something of
disappearance,
6 months.
seems
So
noteworthy.
the auditors
Further
guarantee
investigations
that
found
the
evidence of
company
Kirchhoff in his
with
car,
a
but
sound
authorities don't seem to
statement
him a
or
suspect. A
something that
2000
has a
judge
positive
ruling says
balance,
Kirchhoff died of
they are
foul play.
indicating that they can continue
Elizabeth Berether and
6
her
at least
months.
in
husband
the
lived
next
in the
6
neighborhood
months.
behind me. On January
Is that so?
25th,
Yeah.
2019, someone drove up
So
to the
that's
house
what the
that she was
auditors
setting up
guarantee.
for a garage sale.
Yeah.
The person
The
got out of their truck and
auditor,
walked her and shot her several times and
okay,
then
for the
drove away.
auditors,
We have surveillance
the
video from a neighbor and it
it
shows the whole thing.
was brought out
But
that
there still
the
hasn't been a
auditors were
suspect
not to
named.
maybe like
The Harris County
the
police are at a
auditors.
loss. It was so
It's
early in the morning that the light was still
okay.
low, so
Here's
it's hard to tell if the person is even a male or female.
the
Elizabeth was
auditor's
a
role was
wonderful person.
they
She was heavily involved in a
since
volunteer
there was
group
no
that
like
would visit hospitals dressed as
there's a
characters
confusion that
from
was brought
Star
about
Wars. Her
within this
marriage
going
was great.
concern issue.
There's just no
So
reason
like
for someone to want to kill her.
what
So over a year later, there's been
the main
nothing.
thing that
All we know
the
right
committee
now
was
is
trying to
that
put
a
is that
random
the
person
auditor
just
should
flew
be able
up
to
and shot
justice this
Elizabeth in her
assumption.
driveway.
Yeah, the auditor is what is
The
supposed to be able to
Ereshkigal
justice
case in
assumption,
Delhi. Teenage girl,
in general.
throat slit in the middle of the night
So,
inside
but
her
at
own
the time they
bedroom.
were not able
Bloody
to do so.
handprints found on the terrace of the house. Arrested a few likely
Because
suspects,
in
but then
principle,
inexplicably
when
let
the
them go
auditors
and arrested the parents instead.
give their
Parents later let out on
statement that
bail. The case
the
still remains unsolved.
the company's
And the motive
financial
still unknown.
reports
Children
are
may love to
reliable
think about
and
it.
free
The
of
police actually botched up the investigation by contaminating
material
crime scenes.
misrepresentation.
Also, the next day,
So they're
body of the
actually
maid,
the
Belle, was
people,
discovered from water
the
tank. Maybe the
stakeholders
maid killed the
can
daughter and later the
are made
maid
to
was
believe
killed by her parents.
that the
It still
business
remains a
is financially
mystery.
sound.
Branson Perry disappeared
Isn't
from
that
his
so?
own backyard in
So
2001.
consequently,
He
they
had friends
think
over
that
to
the
help get the house in
organization
order for his dad, who
they're
was
made to
coming
believe,
home
at
from the
least that's
hospital.
why people
He went
look
to the
at the
backyard
financial
to put something away in the shed,
although
and no one saw
I
him
don't know
again. His dad
which
came home like a week later than
code
expected,
is that. I
so his
think still
disappearance wasn't
in
reported
this
till
that
later.
together
But
with
what about
the
the
financial
friends
report
that
there
were there
should
with him?
be a
Did they not
director's
notice his
report
disappearance? Why
so
didn't
that
they look for him?
they give a
Then
more
when police checked
comprehensive
the shed, the item he
view
was
of
returning
the
wasn't there, which shows up
actual
randomly
position
like 2 weeks later.
of the company,
Apparently he had a history of
financial
abuse,
position of the
and his
company.
dad had just caught him sleeping with a male friend a week before he
Yes.
disappeared or something. Somehow police came to the conclusion
Anyway, okay.
that he hitchhiked somewhere.
So
They arrested a guy
essentially,
who would pick up
it's a
young male
statement
hitchhikers and
and
kill
still
them, and he
the
admitted to
director's
many murders, but not
responsibility
random. It's not
to
eerie
provide that
or chilling
statement,
impressive.
right?
There's just so many random facts about the case
Okay.
that don't seem to have any correlation. What's even stranger is that his cousin was actually murdered a few years after him. Some woman murdered her and
And the
removed her
director
unborn
should
baby
state
from
in
her
the report and
stomach.
accounts that
That
will be
poor
received going
family,
concern
what
with
to the
distorting
odds?
assumptions or
Edit added the name of
qualifications
the boy and the year he
as necessary.
disappeared. I could
And
remember the
the
info
question,
when
there's
I
also
typed this
like
originally and had trouble
the question,
finding it again.
the current
Edit
question of
2,
legislation that
spelling.
should have been
The
decided in the light of
Cyclops
executed the
disappearance.
issue.
A U.S. Navy
So
ship
thank you so
vanished
much for
without a
much
Sorry,
trace with
say
over
that
300
again, the
men
last
on board
statement
in the
that you
Bermuda
said.
Triangle in 1980.
The question of
What's even
legislation
creepier
should be
is
decided
that
in the
two of
light
her
of
sister ships
experience.
also vanished on that same route in the
registration.
1940s. Her other sister ship was
So
renamed the Us
next
Langley
slide.
and converted into America's first
Fraud.
aircraft carrier.
Okay,
The
so
loss of
fraud
the Cyclops is
definition
the
is
largest
it refers
non-combat
to
loss of life
precipitation
in
of
Navy
acts resulting in the
One
object of
theory I
the
heard
fraud
about the
receiving an
triangle
injury
in
by
general
acting
is that there
upon
may
a
be methane vents
yeah,
underwater,
just a
so methane bubbles under
representation
the
of facts.
surface, changing the
So the
density of
primary
water,
responsibility
which
for
could
the
sink
prevention
ships,
and detection
as well as the
of fraud
density of the
is
air,
that
which
is
could
that of the
sink
board as
planes.
part of
But
its
not
fiduciary
sure if
responsibility
that's
for
been
protecting the
investigated
assets of the
further.
company.
The
So the
disappearance
auditor's
of Timothy
responsibility is
Whitty.
defined in
He was the
auditing
6 years old
guidelines
who
is
was
to
dropped out of
properly
school by
plan,
his
perform,
father
and
and then
evaluate
later
his or
picked up
her
by his
own
mother, who took him on a
audit
3-day
work
vacation
so
seeing
as to
various
have a
amusement
responsible
parks.
expectation
Her
of
body was
detecting
later
material
found in a
misstatements
motel room.
in the financial
Death from a
statements.
suicide by Timothy
However, there are
was never
some
found.
problems that
Her suicide notes claimed
aroused
Timothy was safe, but would
came up
never be found.
that
And since
was
2011,
surrounding
no
the issue
trace of
for
him has ever been
the first
discovered,
issue. Maybe you
dead
can go
or
to the next
alive.
slide.
The idea that she took him to all these wonderful places in the bid
So
to
first
show
issue
him an
was
amazing time in what very well was the
since
last days
fraud
of his life
involves
filled with
forgery,
so much
collision,
sorrow
or
and
management
sends chills down
overhead
my
of
spine.
control system.
It's just a case
It
I
was really
believe
hard to
about her.
judge at the
I
time.
was on a forum with his
So
dad
the
when
first
this
thing to the
happened,
duty on the
and
auditor
still to
to
this
check
day,
material fraud
is that he
because
has some closure. If he is
he will never be in
alive,
a position to guarantee
eventually
that
he'll
such
find
fraud
out
has
slash
taken
figure
place
it out, I
was not
hope.
to be taken as a
A case
solution.
that made me
And
extremely
one of the
scared as
solutions
bell
is to
gums.
carry out
She
extensive
was
auditing,
killer in
but at a
1900
cost. The
she
question
killed.
is whether,
So many
so the
people
main question
that
that
her
arises
backyard
is
was
this
filled with
extra cost
blurry body
justified?
parts of almost 27
The
different people.
second problem,
She
next
wrote to
slide.
people to come meet her, and they never went back. But the thing that gave
The
me
second
chills last
problem
night
is
when I was listening to the story was that her
insufficient
house
account
was set
management
on
itself
fire with two kids
is implicated
inside,
in the
and a
fraud
headless
without
body
having
of a woman.
necessary evidence to back
Neighbors
up the
said that the
suspicion.
body
The
looked
auditors
smaller than bells and the head
were
was never
not
found.
in a
She had
strong
wanted
position
people
to
to
confront
believe
management,
that she had
nor
burned
have
in
a
the
case
fire
to
with the
report to the
kids,
appropriate
but I'm
authorities.
pretty sure she escaped and was
So
never
this,
found
of
again.
course,
She
we
seemed
also
like a
seen
very
in Kenya
scary and
because
wild woman.
in
Scared to scrap
sometimes
out
if
having
the
cold
auditor
sleep
was
last
to
night
maybe like
thinking how
report
many lives she could have
some
taken
maybe
after
like
her fake death.
if well, maybe like in
The three
suspicion there is a
designated
malpractice
master plan
at
to
the
escape
start,
Alcatraz Island.
most of
It
the
was
time
thought out
this
but no one
it's
expected.
just
They
it might
started their
be
way
the
out
problem
after
might be
lights
this
were out and
might be
everyone was in a cell in the
just pushed
garden
to the side
unseen.
and the
It was like time in June,
auditor might just
so the
use the job
water's
just like
always
that just
cooled down.
because it helps
Many
conflict
think they
management.
escaped
So
on a
like
raft
at
and
the
made it
time they were
somewhere
not
safe. Others
in a
are
strong
unsure
position to
and
confront
think they
such
might have
confront
drowned
management
or
if such
fell
a
in the
case was to
water.
occur.
To think if they
So
succeeded or not makes my chest quiver.
one of
The way I
the
see it, those three
one of the
armies took
solutions
to
that we're giving
close
is
down.
to have maybe
Several of
like
the
an
Anglo
effective and
siblings claimed they received
independent-minded
sporadic
audit
letters from their
committee
brothers 4 years
was
after
under
the escape,
centralized part to
and
such a
their mother's
situation.
anonymous
So the
flowers every
roles played by
Mother's
this
Day.
committee
The
will be
family friend
one
claimed to
to
have taken a
consider
photo of the
whether
brother in
any extra
person
work
in the
should be
1970s.
undertaken in
There's a
addition to the
strong
normal audit
resemblance,
process
but
to
both men are
investigate
wearing sunglasses and one has a
dependencies
beard,
against
so
fraud
it's
and
not
preparing
definitive.
reports on the
The
adequacy of internal
disappearance of
control
Amy
system.
Bradley.
The
She
second
disappeared off a
solution, the
cruise ship
second
in
role played by this audit
1998.
committee was
The most reasonable
they should
answer
provide
is
the forum
that
in
she
which
was
auditors
drunk
can
and fell
discuss
off
at
the
board
ship.
level any
There
concern
are so
they
many
may
weird
have about
details in the
possibility of
story
fraud by
that
senior
make you
management.
wonder. I firmly
So
believe
yeah,
in a can
so next
smuggler in
slide.
this case. If you have ever been in a cruise ship stateroom
So
with the balcony,
one of the
you know
proposals
how narrow they
that
are.
were given
Add this to
were
the fact that she had partying until
auditors should
5
have a
a.m. and the
duty to
last time
report
she would
fraud
be seen alive would
to
be
the
on that
appropriate
balcony.
authorities.
I feel bad
The
that her
auditor's duty
family
is
has been
normally to
scammed,
report
but
fraud
I
to senior
honestly
management,
believe that she drowned before
where
anyone
however
noticed
he
she was missing.
or she no
I
longer
don't think
has
she slash
confidence
was a
that
sex
senior
worker on an
management will
island with a
deal
1980s
adequately with the
Mac
matter.
dealer, despite
This
how
auditor is
convincing
encouraged by
that one photo may
professional
be.
guidance to
It
report fraud
definitely
to
makes the
the
most
specific
sense, but
authorities.
it's interesting to think about the different possibilities. I had also never been on a cruise ship, so I don't know
That
exactly what the
report on
balconies are
the Bank
like.
of Credit Commerce
The
is not
Dutch
under the
girls that
time
went
it was
lost in the
compiled by
jungle of
Lord
Panama.
Justice
I
Bingham.
think one of the cell
He
phones on
recommends that in
camera
the
was
case of
found,
banks, it would be better
with pictures of the
it
dark.
would be better for there
Apparently,
to
they
be a
tried to use a
statutory
flash
duty,
to light
and
their
also the
way for a
government in
moment.
accepting the
Weird thing
recommendation
is
at
that
the
it was
time announced
extremely
a similar
unlikely
approach to the
that they
extent
would
to
go
auditors
away
to the
from the
regulated
path.
sector.
IDK.
So I guess
Maybe it
at the
just
time it is
seems
a big
extremely
plus
sad to me.
for the auditing
Oklahoma
process.
Girl Scout
And the
murders in
second proposal was the
1977.
committee
There
does
was
not
an annual
recommend
Girl
that a
Scout
statutory
camp in
duty
Eddy,
to
Oklahoma.
report fraud
During
should
a
be
camp
extended
counselor
beyond the
training,
regulated
the
sector
place
to
got
the
ransacked
generality
and
of
someone
companies.
left a note
So
about
the committee,
murdering 3
however, did
campers.
did
The note
however
was
see
believed to
scope
be a
for
joke.
extending
Months
to the details
later,
of all
the
comprehensive
girls arrive at the camp.
statutory
There's a thunderstorm at night.
provisions applying to
Overnight,
auditors in
the
the regulated
campers say they
sector,
heard
which
guttural
enable them
noises
to
coming
report
from the woods and
reasonable
a girl
suspicion
crying
of
out for
fraud
her mother.
clearly to the
The
appropriate
campers and counselors thought it
investigatory
was a homesick
authorities.
girl.
So
A counselor found 3
this will
girls. They
strengthen
were from the
the
same
position of
church,
auditors
along
who
a
report
camp
fraud
trail.
against the
They
risk
had
of
been
a suit
raped and murdered.
put against
There
him
was an
by
arrest.
the
But he was
client
acquitted.
for maybe,
He
for
died
example,
shortly
maybe
after
breach of duty
trial. He was
to
sent to
maintain
jail
a
for a previous
confidential
charge.
client relationship
Some still
of
believe he did
or
it, but DNA evidence was
information.
inconclusive.
So
There's a bunch
the
more twists and turns. You
committee
really have
recommended
to
that
read
the
about
government
it
should
or
consider
listen to a
introducing
podcast about
legislation
it.
according to
That's the
justice
one that
this matter.
stays with me. It's
So I
like it
guess
came from a
from
scripted
here I
horror movie.
can leave it to
The
Casey to
Jonathan
finish
Baxi
on auditing.
case, semicolon. She was a pageant princess that was killed on Christmas in her family home when she was just 6 years old.
I'll
A
take you
lot of
through
people
other
thought her
illegal
parents did it,
activities other
so
than
the police
fraud.
basically ignored any
Who's this
evidence
now?
that didn't point to her
Miss
parents,
Kelsey.
causing them to botch the
Chelsea.
case. There's so many theorizes on what happened, such as family friends at the party, that night staying the house after house, and
Okay.
then sneaking up to
So
her room once
apart
everyone
from
had
fraud,
fallen
he
asleep, which has
identified
been
some
debunked
other
now. Or that
examples
her
of
brother was
illegal
violent
activities that
towards
have
her
happened
and killed her
in
with a
the
blow to the
company.
head, and the
For
mother
example,
tried to cover
rape,
it up.
abuse,
However,
sale, or possession
while
of
it seems
illicit
logical,
controlled
it
substance.
doesn't explain the
So
two
the main
strangest DNA
conclusion
found
that
on
was
her.
sort of
Then
drawn
there's
from
the
the
odd thing
Cadbury
about
report
whoever
was,
killed her fed
should
her
the
Midway,
auditors bear
one of
this
her favorite snacks,
responsibility
revealing
to
that
sort
it was
of
possible
manage
children knew
and
her,
control
such
such
a
illegal
fascinating
activities, point
mystery.
them out if they're in.
Pedophiles that lived on her
But the
street,
decision
and later
was
found to
basically
have a
that
mini
it should
shrine
be the
for
board who's
so
responsible to
weird.
sort
Oh
of
Lord, did not know
establish
that I
what
was
are their legal
terrified.
duties and to
All
ensure
the
that
children they were
monitor and
feeding
comply with
Scooby and
those rules.
Cereals. Age 9,
The main
7,
issue was
and
it
4,
was kind of
and
difficult
weekend
to
disappeared objects
expand the role of the
since
auditors to the extent that
1766
now
on
they are
Sunday
acting as
from Adelaide, about
this
45
sort of,
here
can we
are
call them
several witnesses who
police
saw the
or
children hanging out near the
legal
old beach with a tall
counterparts
dolphin
in
faced
trying to
bamboo in
solve
hand,
the
and hosted
company's
athletic build in his
issues in case any arrive.
1954
But
and
it
its
was
still a cold
left
case
out
of
to
goggles, my mind.
other individuals in the company
Old
that
friend,
were
and
mainly
didn't see
not
it.
bought by
So
the
I have
board
to say
itself,
the
board of
Setake
the
family
company.
murders. A family of 4 was murdered in their
Go to
home
the
in
next slide.
Tokyo in 2000. The killer stabbed the parents and older daughter and strangled
Okay,
the youngest,
so
and then remained in their house
on
for
the
hours
issue of
after. He used the
liability,
computer. Ace used the
I just
toilet,
like to
and if I
bring
recall
forth
correctly,
a
didn't
small
flush.
dialogue on a
Lots of
little on the
DNA was
Caparo
recovered,
journey.
along with other
There was a
clues,
company
but they
in
never
the
published.
1990s
There's
known
still a
as
reward.
Caparo PLC,
Edit, a typo.
and it had
Clips
its
perhaps would
stake
hijack
in
the Ripper
another
or
company
something.
called
That
Fidelity.
just freaks me out in
So
the
Fidelity
streets.
is an
There is
electrical
no good
company,
way of
and
finding out
in the
about it due to the
1990s when
lack
it
of
was
technology,
the
of
tech
course. Lack of
world was booming,
cautiousness of evidence or
Caparo saw
eyewitness
fit to
testimonies.
buy
Basically,
more shares
everything
in the
went
company.
against the police of
And
London at the time.
at the time, it
Reflecting on
was
that, there
the
are still
reports that
some
were being
cases today
generated
that
by
have yet to
the
be fully
auditing
solved.
firm
Just like
were
Ted Bundy may
positive
have
in the
actually
sense
come
that
far
Fidelity was
and
actually
actually
making profit.
though
But
the Zodiac killer
towards
has
the
yet to be discovered and may still be
1984,
roaming
the
amongst us
company
today.
was
Again,
actually
to
kind
Vera
of going
Valenti,
low on
she
profit.
was a
So
CEO at a tech company
Caparo
that was
offered
studying brain
a
machine
sort of
interface technology, or
what's the
simply
term?
mind control, at the time. While on her way to a business
It was
conference
basically
in another
offering a bid
state,
to
she
buy
called her mother
the
and her
company. I think it's called
boyfriend.
a
Her
takeover.
last words to
So
both of them
they
were,
were to
"It's
basically,
Armageddon. It's a thought experiment. We're in the
Buyout.
Matrix."
pardon?
Police found her in her
Is it
car in
called
Edmonton,
buyout?
later dead in the backseat.
I
No
think
sign of the
so.
struggle.
I think so.
Just
Management
a
Okay.
healthy
buyout.
33-year-old
Anyway,
who died of suspected
for those who
bathroom
know
Okay.
the
disease.
rules.
So
There's a great video on YouTube
yeah.
by Lloyd George who
So
explains it better
they
than I
sent
ever
the bid
could.
to take over
The
the
autopsy
company,
showed her
and
death was due to an
at the
accident
time
manic episode.
they knew for a fact
The
that
disappearance of
Fidelity
Blythe Laspis still
PLC
keeps
was
me up
making profit,
sometimes.
but later
He
on
was a
found out that they were actually
19-year-old
making
college
losses.
student.
So
According to his
the
girlfriend and
company
owners,
Caparo now
he had been
sued
displaying
the
odd
auditor. I
behavior
think
for
it's
about a
called
week,
Dick.
staying up for 24
He
to 48
was
hours.
sued on
Taking
the count of
ADHD medication
Caparo making
and
losses
drinking a lot.
by buying a
After
company
a fight
that
with his
was
girlfriend,
not
he
making
unexpectedly
profit, but
started
was
driving
actually
back
making
home to
loss.
his
They
parents.
were recording
He
profits of
received a
up
call
to
from
2.4
roadside
million,
assistance that he had
2.4
run out
billion
of gas in Buttonwood,
euros,
a city
but in
and
actual
town
sense, they are
mostly
making
made up
a
of rest
quarter
stops. They were
value of
presumed he was
that in
driving to
loss.
see them, but they
So,
couldn't
and
get a hold of him. Hours
the
later,
Caparo
he
team
still
took
had not arrived, so they
the
called the
case
auto
to
shop he
court.
had
I'm
gone
not too
to
sure
and
which
spoke
order
with
it
the man
was,
who helped
if
him
they
get
took it
gas
first to the
several
Court
hours
of
earlier.
Appeal or the House of
He told
Lords.
them that Bryce
But
was still
let's just start with the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal ruled in their favor that the auditors should be held accountable for any loss that Kaparo inquired in the case. In this case now, they stated that the auditors are responsible because shareholders like Kaparo and other third parties use those reports to sort of make their decision on, like for this example, buying a company or buying stock if you're an external shareholder. But later on, when the same case was taken to the House of Lords, which is basically just a second chamber of parliament, they ruled in favor of auditors, that the auditors shouldn't be held accountable for the loss that now third parties or companies like Aparo face if the reports were wrong. So it kind of brought up this controversy or misconception that indicated that the court will go so fast to that the audit report is a guarantee as to the accuracy of the account and perhaps even as to the soundness of a company. Basically, that your reports sort of mirror how well or companies performing. If it's good, then yeah, that means your company is also performing. But and then the second one was that anyone, including investors and creditors, can rely on the audit, not only in the general sense, but also very specifically being able to sue the auditor if they're ineligible. The main concern of the House of Lords was to what extent should the auditors be held liable. So the ruling was based off of two arguments, that the auditors should be held accountable for losses that are incurred. And some of the arguments put forth were, for extension, that is, was that third parties truly rely on these statements, therefore there exists an expectation gap, that as a third party, Caparo requires those documents to actually make that decision, that they actually used that report to buy the company. Another argument that was put forth was they're professionals, so they should be held up to that decorum, that they are expected as auditors. You shouldn't make mistakes this big because basically you're being paid for it. Then third point or argument that was brought forth was it was sort of bad publicity for the auditors once they're figured out. Like if you end up messing up something like this, I'm not so sure if Dickman ever got another chance to work. Yeah. Then for the other side of the court that argued against extension, they said that third parties aren't paying the auditors, so why should the auditors actually care about why if you make losses or not? Another argument was the potential magnitude of the liability is out of proportion to the audit fee. You're paying an auditing company, let's say for example, I'm just gonna give a rough figure like 100,000, but then the company losses are equivalent to millions. The auditing company would end up going bankrupt to the extent that we can't actually be liable in case you guys make loss. We can't indemnify you if you make those losses. Then there's also the issue of how can we be so sure that Caparo was actually basing their judgment to buy the company off of like the reports? Is there any clear evidence that those reports were what drove Caparo to buying now the company? Yeah. But later on they ruled that
Okay, give us the ruling before I ask the class.
They ruled in favor of the auditors holding only a proportion of liability or limited liability. For proportional, it's if you end up making a mistake as the auditing firm, you take a small amount of it, not the complete, how do I say it? You don't take full liability in case loss happens. And then in limited liability, there are some issues that might not affect as an auditing firm.
Teenagers fooling around on one of the trails a couple miles away. Since the trails were closed at sunset, the ranger and my co-worker drove off to show them back
I'd like to ask the class.
My other friend and I were just relaxing
Can
around
you,
the fire.
I'm going to put you in breakout rooms.
Mostly enjoying
Just
the light
before
and
you
the peace and
continue,
quiet.
I'd like
All of a sudden, I had a cold chill go over me.
just
The
a
hair
few
stood
minutes
up
to
on the back of
discuss
my
among
neck,
yourselves,
and out of
given
nowhere
this
I was
case.
terrified. I tried to
What do you
ignore
think
it,
should be
but
the
it kept building.
responsibility of the
I
auditor?
didn't say anything
Okay,
to my
he's put
friend.
for us
I
very
didn't want to
clear,
scare her.
you
Then
know,
I glanced over at
delineation
her,
of what to
just as she
expect, what not
glanced
to
at me,
expect.
and she said,
But
"Do you feel that?" Question
I
mark,
would like
exclamation
you to
mark. I
discuss
said,
among
"Yeah,
yourselves
I think
what
maybe
should be
we'd
the
better go to
position
the
of the
car."
auditors.
We both felt
How much
like we were
liability
in
should they
deadly
have?
danger, but no idea from what. We started walking at
I
a
want
casual
you
pace,
to reason
not
it out.
wanting to appear scared. Then halfway to the car, we looked at each other again and simultaneously broke into a
Should
dead
they
run.
be held
We
liable?
reached the car.
put you in breakout rooms just to discuss for a few minutes, maybe just 5 or less. Let's say 5.
Get seen in a hot minute. I know we had a pretty good result
Tyron,
last week. Breaking up
Tyron from your group.
Yeah, from a group, okay, we have for the opinion that yes, the auditor holds liability to all the decision he makes, the influence, how third parties make transactions, but it should be based on if any institution, any auditing firm should have contractual basis on, this mistake is made and this is the amount of them to be held. Because I guess auditors in the end hold fiduciary duty towards the public on the decisions they make. Because I guess any auditor knows that like these financial documents should be used for decisions. So yes, they do hold. There's liability to be held in the auditing they do, in the documents they produce.
Okay, any other group? Thank you, Tyron. Any other representation from other groups?
Get away, let me just get on life for free.
Rebecca?
Who's he evening up the stock count too?
Based on what we discussed, we agreed that auditors basically are responsible for analyzing what is before them, the books that have been provided to them, as opposed to so they bear some liability, but not a huge percentage of liability.
Okay, very good. Anybody else? Samuel?
So under the contractual obligations that the auditor has agreed with the company or with the shareholders, he has to comply with those terms. Otherwise, he is subject to prosecution if he goes against what he has agreed upon.
Yeah, okay. Okay, very good. You remember also what we talked about integrated reporting. But talking about auditors, well, they have the responsibility, and that's part of the service that they provide. It's implicit. It goes with Rebecca. Is your hand still up, or you're finished talking? Okay. Okay. They carry a huge responsibility with the contract, with the task that they have undertaken. Okay, because it's to the company, but also it's to the public, because people count on that. But given that the auditor's report has to do with the financial position, and it's not for the whole, we can say, integrity of the organization, the whole soundness of the organization. Although the financial aspect is a huge part, okay. Well, it has a very big bearing on the success of the organization, and that's why investors rely on that. They rely heavily on that, and they have that burden they have that responsibility to provide an objective, sound, and reliable, complete, report in terms of the financial position of the company. So they are responsible. And then the shareholder, rather the investors, they have also that responsibility to examine the whole soundness, if you will, no, of the organization, not only the financial aspect, but as we have said, in terms of investment, the financial position holds a huge part. So that the auditors have to be responsible. But as to the degree, I mean, up to what extent, I guess it's very hard to distinguish. I mean, to establish. I'd say it's for a really good part. Because the auditors, by the way, they are not paid 100,000. They are paid much more. They can also be paid in millions. Depends on the size of the company they are auditing. Okay, anyway, I wanted you to think a little bit so that we break that, continuous talking like a little bit of distraction. But it's good to think, what's my position? Then of course afterwards you weigh the situation based on other available information. Okay, Steven, I think you can continue. I think you can still finish.
Okay, so based on the conclusion that I just gave before the breakout, this was some of the key considerations put in place that sort of helped them balance out the third parties and companies, like the internal shareholders. So one of them was the size of the auditor's potential liabilities, difficulty and wider in any fair yet practical way, and the likely difficulty in establishing the third party. Yeah, next slide. This is, I had already summarized it, so you can just go to the next one. The next one, this one. Yeah, then the final section was the auditor's confidence. So, according to the report, the committee is confident in the accounting profession in improving its standards and procedures. There are a few mentionables. The joint ethics committee that tackles from areas such as opinion shopping and partner reputation. So, opinion shopping is basically finding out about good Asian companies. And the first company that came to mind was Enron, that were done by which we sort of hide the company report some of their losses that were made. They were hiding them. And basically having different auditors, like one concept. Then some of the measures that were considered to tighten those standards, they also provided them the joint ethics committee, and they saw them as objective in the sense that they were rigorous and came to know. Yeah. Can go to the next.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Salome.
Salome.
Okay. Yes. I'll be taking you through the financial reports and control.
Open the door for me, I come.
Please go to the next slide. So first I'll give you the definition of what financial reports is. Financial reporting involves the disclosure of financial information to the various stakeholders about the financial performance and the financial position of the organization over a specified period of time. It is like an end product of accounting. So what do we mean by a specified period of time? Normally, there is an annual report and a quarterly report. So the annual report, it is like a primary channel where communication is sent to the stakeholders. But as much as we have this annual report, the stakeholders need to be in constant contact with what is going on. So now we have the quarterly report, which involves additional costs of companies and ultimately for their shareholders, and does not. So it gives basically a broader information and how the company is performing. So there are two financial reports. One is the financial report for the various stakeholders and the management reporting for internal management. So for the various stakeholders, just as it is for various stakeholders, which include investors, creditors, just as we had discussed earlier. And then management reporting for internal management. Now, this is responsible for establishing and maintaining an adequate system of the internal control. Because as much as we want the stakeholders to be involved in what is going on, there's supposed to be a control internally of the organization and an internal control. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we have the components of financial reporting. Before we go on, there is usually something called the opening statement of financial reporting. So this opening statement is usually it is by the chairman, and the financial reporting is usually through the sorry, I'm looking for the word. Through the I don't found the word, but through the years they realized that the opening statement is usually read by many people. So this opening statement should be balanced and have reasonable summary. So before all this, you have to have like an opening statement where you understand what the financial reporting has, and it has to be broad and it has the best summary because most people read the opening statement. But normally the components of financial reporting as finance statements that involves the balance sheet, profit, loss account, all this we'll discuss at a later stage. And then there's the notes of financial statements, and then the quarterly and annual report, just as I explained earlier, the prospectus, and then the management discussion and analysis. Now, this prospectus is it's a printed booklet. It's a booklet. It is mostly used when the company has IPOs. So it's when the private company is going public. So it's a formal document that is required by any field to exchange the commissions that provide details about an investment offering to the public. So it's more of it shows the opening of the company at that time if they want to sell shares and stuff like that. You can go to the next slide, please. So what does the financial statement contain? As I said, I will discuss this about the profit and loss account, the balance sheet, and the cash flow. So these are usually very important. So what is the profit and loss account? It shows the gross and net profits or loss. It is useful for helping readers to understand the financial performance of the company. It sees how the company is performing. So it basically, you understand where the company is, because if a company is making losses or is it making profits. So this is very important for the shareholders to understand where the organization is. And then the balance sheet, it shows the relationship between the assets of the businesses or what the businesses own or is owned and the liabilities of the business. So it is like an outline of what this company has and what it doesn't have. Its loans, what they owe people and what they are on, such things. And then the cash flow is how much cash is generated within the business. Can we go to the next slide? And then characteristics of a good financial report. What is required in this financial report? Because as you can see, the financial report is being read by so many different people, the shareholders and the internal control. So what is the best, what is the good characteristics? So they should aim for the highest level of disclosure with presenting reports that are understandable. You cannot give people reports that they do not understand. So you should the report should be very easy for people to understand, and then it avoids damages to their competitive position. So you don't disclose too much, neither it should be disclosed very little, because you still have your position to look at, and then ensure integrity and consistency of the report. So the report should be true. You should not add or leave out certain things that are very necessary in that report. And then it should meet the spirit as well as the letter of the reporting standards. So it will meet how this organization is working, like how its performance, how is the performance, is it at a good performance now, is it at a low? So the report should show where the organization lies. Next slide, please. And then now, like anything, you need to have goals. So we also have financial goals we need to understand like, what are we trying to achieve and stuff like that. So here, comparison are made between the actual performance and the target set. So what are these goals that are set? We have the net sale values, that is the growth between 3% and 5%. It refers to the growth in sales of the company, e.g., how much products are you selling to the market? Like for the company Cadbury, it's how much sweets, how much things are they giving to different supermarkets or to their consumers? So by that, they will understand how their net sale value, how their growth is going. Next slide, please. And then operating margin growth of between 50 and 70 basis per year. So this refers to making more profit for each euro of sales made, e.g., buying ingredients and packaging materials as efficiently as possible. So these are the things, the expenditure, how much are you buying these packaging materials? So you're supposed to buy them as efficiently as possible so that the margin should not be too high between what you are selling and what you are receiving. And then the free cash flow refers to how much cash is generated within the business, e.g. the increase in profit. So throughout this year, how much has been generated and stuff like that. Next slide. Oh, sorry, before that, there was a slide that was removed, was not there. It was the importance of why do we need financial reporting? Why is it necessary to have this? So it provides information to the management of an organization, which is used for the purpose of planning, analyzing, benchmarking, and decision making. So if you understand where your organization is in terms of the finance, you will easily make decision on whether you want to buy a share from that company or not. And then provide information to the investor, promoters, debt providers, creditors, which is used to enable them to make rational and prudent decisions. Same thing. If I want to loan you something, I have to look at your financial statements. I have to understand where you are. I have to understand the performance and stuff like that. And then it provides information to the stakeholders and public at large in case of listed companies about various aspects of the organization. So more or less, it's more of that information that is very necessary when buying shares and stuff like that. Yeah, and then information on how the organization is procuring and using various resources. Yeah, so that is the importance of the financial reporting, and that's all.
You see, that's now with that, Salome is telling us how much the stakeholders, the investors, the creditors are using the financial statement. And that's why it has to be reliable, it has to be integral, it has to be reliable, it has to be complete, it has to be objective. Anyway, okay, proceed with the shareholders.
Okay, so this is Lewis, and I'll be taking you through the shareholders. So we know that every public company must have a board of directors, which is the governing body that typically meets at regular intervals to set policies for corporate management and oversight. The board of directors represents the shareholders who elect them, and the board reports on their stewardship to these shareholders, and this is their formal relationship. And the issue for corporate governance regarding shareholders is how to strengthen the accountability of boards of directors to shareholders. The individual shareholders and shareholder organizations tabled several proposals addressing this issue. One of the proposals was that shareholders should be more closely involved in the appointment of directors and auditors through the formation of shareholder committees. And the other proposals were directed at making it easier for shareholders to individually or collectively put resolutions forward at general meetings. So for the first proposal, unless committees that are both truly representative of all the company's shareholders and able to keep them in regular touch with their changing constituencies, who are the shareholders who elect them, are formed, the committee saw no way how shareholder committees can become the accepted link between boards and its shareholders. The second set of proposals raises such questions as what legislation will be needed to change the current minimum for putting forward shareholder resolutions or propositions, and where the costs involved in circulating shareholder communications should fall. Therefore, it was in the committee's view how far these suggestions are followed up should depend on the degree of support which they command from the shareholders as a body, as a whole. So if a resolution is supported by most shareholders, the board should look into these suggestions as it is representative of the majority's view. Next slide. In the meantime, shareholders can make their views known to the boards of the companies in which they are invested by communicating with them directly and through their attendance at the AGMs, which happen at regular intervals, typically annually or half-yearly. Shareholders have delegated many of their responsibilities as owners to the directors who act as their stewards. It is for the shareholders to demand an explanation from the directors if they appear to be failing in their stewardship, and they should use this power. And since they cannot be involved in the direction and management and everyday management of the company, they can insist on high standards of corporate governance and good governance as an essential test of the director's management. Accountability to the boards to the shareholders will therefore be strengthened if shareholders will require their companies to comply with the code of best practices which outline the structure and responsibilities of the boards of directors, the role of auditors and recommendation to the accountancy profession, and the rights and responsibility of shareholders. Reports and accounts are presented to shareholders at the AGM when they can comment on them and ask questions. In particular, the AGM gives all shareholders direct and public access to their boards regardless of the size of their shareholdings. In the committee's view, in order to strengthen the accountabilities of the boards to their shareholders, both shareholders and boards of directors should consider how effectiveness of AGM could be increased. Some of the possible way forward included providing forms during the meeting, an opportunity to ask questions at the meeting itself, and the circulation of a brief summary of points raised at the AGM to all shareholders after the event. Consideration might also be given to ways of boards keeping in touch with their shareholders outside the annual and half-yearly reports. Next slide. For under institutional shareholders, the first we will start by defining the institutional shareholders, who are businesses such as mutual funds or banks or insurance companies which hold shares in a publicly traded company. The proportions held by individuals and by the institutions have broadly reversed over the last 30 years, so that the institutional shareholders now own the majority of shares quoted by companies. They are, however, largely holding their shares on behalf of individuals as members of pension funds, holders of insurance policies, etc. Given the weight of their votes, the way in which the institutional shareholders use their power to influence the standard of corporate governance is of fundamental importance. Their readiness to do this turns on the degree to which they see their responsibility as owners and in the interest of those whose money they are investing to bring about changes in the company when necessary. There are three key conclusions which are basic to the development or constructive relationship between companies and their owners. Next slide. Previous slide.
You didn't read the three.
Yeah, I think, oh yeah, they're here. Sorry. Institutional investors should encourage regular and systematic contact at senior executive level. This is to provide an opportunity to exchange views and information on strategy, performance, board membership, and quality of management. Secondly, institutional investors should make positive use of their voting rights unless they have good reason for doing otherwise. They exercise their vote in firms that are not performing well, where they can use their vote to bring about meaningful change at the firms. And then finally, institutional investors should take a positive interest in the composition of board of directors with reference to the concentration of decision-making power not formally constrained by appropriate checks and balances makes them too powerful, and to the appointment of non-executive directors of the necessary caliber, experience, and independence. Next slide. So for shareholder communications, the conclusions on the role of institutional shareholders raised issues over the lines of communications between the boards and their shareholders. The first issue was parity between shareholders. This is because the institutions are in a position to keep in touch with the boards of companies in which they are invested in a way that is not visible for the individual shareholders. Therefore, what boards must do is to ensure that significant statements concerning their companies are made publicly and so are equally available to all shareholders. The second issue arises over communications between institutional investors and companies is the danger of imparting insider information. Thus, if a price-sensitive information is to be given, it must only be with the prior consent of the shareholder, who will then be unable to bid in the company's shares until the information has been publicly made. It is important that companies should communicate their strategies to major shareholders, and their shareholders should understand them in order for them to develop a long-term relationship. And finally, about the shareholder influence. Next slide. Yeah, because of the importance of their collective stake, we look at the institutions in particular with the backing of institutional shareholder committees to use their influence as owners to ensure that companies in which they have invested in comply with the code of best practices. The obligation on companies to state how far they will comply with the code of best practices, and this provides institutional and individual shareholders with a ready-made agenda for their representation to the boards, and therefore it is up to them to make good use. Thank you.
My name is Jeffrey Shuki. I'll be taking you through the impact of the report. So,
Sorry, I didn't get the name.
Jeffrey Shuki.
Jeffrey.
So when the report was implemented, it managed to have the following impact on corporate governance and through the reforms and changes that it brought. So it improved investor confidence on the honesty and accountability of the listed companies, and this can be further explained by the next points. The first, the second point, right, is building up on one of the aims that Steve had said earlier on, that one of the aims for the Cadbury report was to create a clear framework that ensured directors were kept under review and would keep reviewing the controls of the business. This was achieved through now what Stacey discussed earlier on, through like where she said, 1 second. Yeah, directors' service contracts should not exceed 3 years without shareholder approval. Policies like that were implemented, allowing for much more, distributed leadership throughout the whole company as a whole, which in itself led to an improvement on leadership and the roles and increased confidence in the roles of directors as a result of those changes made.
Shareholders, consumers, and suppliers were also more inclined to invest, buy, and work with the listed companies as they were assured of the accountability and social responsibility of those companies. Through the auditing and financial reports, they demonstrated transparency, agency, and social accountability. However, as the provisions of the code were given statutory authority, the London Stock Exchange was expected to enact a comply or explain order. Comply and explain meaning it's a regulation method used in UK, Netherlands, Germany, and other countries to basically let the market decide whether this set of standards is appropriate for the company. So through these comply and explain, the LSE was supposed to enact that. The London Stock Exchange was supposed to enact that. But instead of enacting the order, the London Stock Exchange made it clear that it was really not inclined to delist any company that refused to implement the code or the Cadbury report in any form. So from this, we can see that compliance with the code was not mandatory and therefore not enforced. However, due to fear, many firms conformed, and due to fear of just being on the wrong end of the authority, they complied and they conformed to the code. It was also costly to implement, and it cost up to 10% of the annual auditing fee to implement for a company. To conclude my end, next slide.
Sorry, hang on. The comply and explain means that everyone is recommended. It is recommended that all companies on the listed that London Stock Exchange comply with the recommendations of the code. However, because they were saying that it depends on the different characteristics, different situations of each company, because everyone may have their own different cases. But if they don't comply, they must explain. Okay, they must explain, meaning that in the financial statements or in financial reports of the organization, or whichever reports, chairman's report, they must indicate why there are certain recommendations of the code that they have not complied with. For example, maybe in the company, they have the same position, they have the duality of the CEO and the chairman. Why is it that they do not have this as separate positions? No, it's not held by two different people. Then they explain why they have not complied with that recommendation. It's comply and explain. That's what it means.
Yes. Thank you for correcting that.
Okay.
And to conclude my end, we can see that the report proved to be a strong turnabout strategy to the UK and serves as a crucial report in corporate governance and has given light to better comprehension on the issues of accountability, openness, and integrity. It also influenced the creation of other reports such as the Green Beauty Report in 1995, the Hampel Report in 1998, and the Turnbull Report in 1999. That's my end.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry. Okay.
The last part, which won't take
Sorry.
long.
Okay. No, it's okay.
My name is Calvin.
This is Calvin. Okay.
Okay, I'll take you through the summary of the recommendations of the report. So the summary was broken down into some parts. The first one was compliance with code of best practice, which Jeff has just talked about, and the picture has explained. Both of all listed companies in the UK should comply with the code of best practice, and the code includes recommendations such as the board should meet regularly and maintain control over the company, divisions of responsibilities such that power isn't enforced on one person. So where the chairman is the chief executive, there needs to be a strong independent board to make company decisions. Actually, the board should include an executive director of sufficient caliber for their views in company decisions. We've been told that when chief directors do not take part in day-to-day activities of the companies. They are separate from the executive directors. So the board should comprise of most of them. Next slide. As has been said again, listed companies reporting after the Cadbury reports publication, which was in 1993, make a statement about their compliance with the code and account with reasons for any non-compliance. This is because, I mean, companies are different and they have.
Sorry, Calvin, hold on. I see people are leaving. I have messages before you leave, so you're going to miss it if you go. I see people signing out. I don't know why. Okay, sorry, Calvin. Just continue. It's okay. If they leave, it's to their own loss. Okay.
For the release of the publications, all companies should ensure that the auditors review them. And these reviews should only cover the parts of the compliance statement which relate to the code of conduct that are just explained. Lastly, in the code of conduct, all parties concerned with corporate governance, including executive directors and executive directors, should use their influence to encourage the compliance with the code. Institutional shareholders are people who have shares in those companies also should use their influence to ensure that the company follows the code of conduct. Next slide. For the non-executive directors, we've said the majority of them should be independent of management and should be free from any relations that could affect their impacts, their independence in the judgment on any issues in the company. So they should not be biased in making any decisions at all. So they should be independent of their judgments. Appointment of non-executive directors also should follow a specified time and should follow formal procedure. It shouldn't be done haphazardly. In case of appointment, the process shouldn't be automatic. There are some regulations or rules that need to be followed. Next. For the executive directors, companies acts need to be amended so that they come in line with the code of conduct, such that the director service contract shouldn't exceed 3 years. This has been mentioned before. There should be full and clear disclosure of total emoluments, which are any profits or any bonuses, any salary that is paid. The chairman and the directors in the company, should be included in the annual report. The annual report should also depict pension contributions and stock options, including separate figures for salary performance related to pay. So in case of any bonus,
steak, broccoli, and a few mashed potatoes. So do you know what the steak is?
The member should be included in the annual report. Lastly, executive directors' pay shall be determined as per the recommendation of a remuneration committee, which is constituted mainly of the non-executive director. The last part. Next slide. This is the last part, which is the financial reporting and controls. It's the duty of the board to present a balanced and understandable assessment of their company's positions to its shareholders. So the shareholders should be in line or should know the position in which their company stands. The institutional shareholders should also be encouraged to make greater use of their voting rights and take positive interest in the functioning of the board. They should not just buy shares and just relax. They can take part in spearheading the direction in which the company takes. Shareholders and the board of directors should consider how effectiveness of general meetings will be increased, as well as how the accountability of the board of directors to shareholders will be strengthened. Because as shareholders are part of the company, the board of directors also should be answerable to them. So they should be in line with what's happening. Every listed company should form an audit committee, which gives the auditors direct access to the executive members of the board. That's all we had for today. In case there's any question, can be asked.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't know if anybody has question, but okay, next week we have the combined code and the US code, the one of Sarbanes-Oxley. And then again, I wanted to ask, please, the other two of the OECD and the King's report, King's 4 report, please try and be ready also. Now, I'm thinking, can we have the cut on Friday? Are you available on Friday? Yes, Matenge.
No, yes. Hi. You're talking
Yes.
about tomorrow.
No, not tomorrow, next week.
Okay, next week. Okay.
Next week. Not because I was thinking we need to use the class for the lesson, and since we had missed one class anyway, so we could have it this cut on another day. Unless you want the cut to be. What kind of cut? What do you mean what kind of cut? A cat. You want it to be a lion. A cat. A test. And what kind? Essay, short questions. You want true or false? I don't know. Multiple choice. I need to check. I don't know. It's difficult to set that kind of exam, that kind of test. But I don't know if I'll manage. But usually just, you can anticipate. Take away cut, Maureen. What do you mean take away cut? You are going to do it on the e-learning. It's short answers, short questions with short answers. Explain corporation. I'll give you an example. Will not come. Maybe out of 35. I haven't made the cut, so I can't really give you. But 1 hour. Cut will be for an hour. It's just short questions. So Friday, at what time can it be? No. You cannot do it at your own time. We are going to have it on the e-learning, and it's open for a specific time. You'll do it. Yes. These presentations are our lessons, so they'll be covered. From the beginning up to today, up to today's class. Okay, I'm going to send a message, but I don't know, Friday morning? So can it be like 9 to 10? 8 to 9? You want it during the class time, but it's going to take away our class, and we have not. I've already uploaded the slides. The only one missing is this presentation. Otherwise, the slides are already on the e-learning. They have been there. 8 to 11:15. Okay. So, Friday, 1 to 2, Thursday after class. Thursday after class. That will be 9 p.m. where I am. Okay, so what about Friday at 12:30 to 1:30? Anyway, let's see. Let me see. Since I haven't made a cut Thursday before class. Okay, I have another class. Okay, let me confirm with Moses or Ian or Michael about the cut, whether it's on Thursday or Friday. 11 to 12. You have a class on Friday. Okay, fine. Let's just say the cut will be on next week, and then please the reporters to be ready and send me your reports beforehand. Before you made a report, the group of UK Combined Code, I've been waiting for your report. I haven't received it up to now. Okay, otherwise, all right, okay, fine. I'll communicate the cut beforehand, and then if you have any objection, you can let me know. Otherwise, we meet next week.